Good evening. My name is Kenyatta Rogers. I am coordinator for the theater program at Montgomery College here in Montgomery County, Maryland. I thank you for being here. I want to thank our students for their hard work. I want to thank our faculty, our staff, our administration for their support. I want to thank our playwright, Renee Calarco, for her generosity. And I want to thank artists across the world, across this nation, especially here in the DC metro area, for their daily acts of inspiration. I especially want to thank the designers on this production, without whom we could not have changed this from a brick and mortar theater production to the online experience you're going to see tonight. This show asks many questions, two of which are, how do we remember as a nation after an act of violence, after a catastrophic event, after times of scarcity, after failed leadership? How do we reconstitute our national identity? This production asks those questions through exhibits as well as through conversations. Tell us what you see. What's there? What's missing? Let us know by reaching out to us on our website, which we'll show a link right after this show, and leaving a comment. Content advisory. This production contains adult content, as well as acts of historical and fictional violence. That said, sit back and enjoy Montgomery College's production of our National Museum of the Unforeseen Tragedy.
Welcome to our National Museum of the Unforeseen Tragedy. Hello, so nice to see you. Here you are. I see you have requested access. Our docents will get you situated. Sorry, may I have your name, please? Thank you. Welcome to our National Museum of the Unforeseen Tragedy. If you'd kindly request access, our docents will take care of you. Thank you. Sorry, you're not on the list, but let me see what I can do. As it turns out, Senator Hirota won't be using his guest tickets tonight. So welcome. The senator is here tonight, and I'm sure he'd love to chat with you before the program begins. Please find a docent and they'll get you situated. Before we begin, I need to confirm one thing about any electronic devices you may be using to access the exhibit. If it was purchased after August 3rd, 2032, I'm obligated to tell you your device may present a serious security risk. You may continue using it, but please do be aware. Thank you. Welcome to our National Museum of the Unforeseen Tragedy. How may I help you? I can't divulge that information. I'm sure you understand. I cannot divulge that information. Thank you for understanding. Ma'am. Officer Aquinas.
Ma'am.
Enter platform, please.
Sir, access here.
Ma'am?
This way, thank you.
Ma'am, please wait in our lobby. No, ma'am, it's a virtual lobby. Thank you.
The exhibit will open momentarily.
Thank you.
Sir, not yet. Please reset your password.
What is your
National ID
Visited
number.
the Texas Republic?
National ID,
When was the
please.
last time you left the
Please.
country?
Have you been to Texas
What's the name of
Republic
your first
recently?
name?
RFID
All
tracker?
right, thank
Do
you.
you have a
ID.
subscription to the
And date of
Bezos
birth,
Post?
please.
Mother's
while we
maiden
authenticate.
name.
What is the name of your first pet?
National ID number.
Mother's maiden name.
Sir, not yet.
Are we clear?
Affirmative.
This way, sir. Thank you.
Ma'am?
Good evening, sir.
772, couple in their 50s, red overcoat, blue blazer.
This way, please.
Please wait in the lobby.
Sir.
Sir. One
One at a time,
please.
please.
823, blonde woman in a black dress and red pumps.
Sir?
This way, thank you.
Wait, please. Please proceed to the lobby. Thank you.
This way. Ma'am. Ma'am.
Oh,
May I see your papers, please?
One Bravo, brunette in a multicolored shirt.
Hold still. Thumb, please.
but
We need to authenticate your ID, please.
is this an audit?
No, ma'am.
Name and date of birth, please.
Lauren Amanda Conway, 8/10/2002.
Your hair is different.
I know. Sorry.
Rainy, one Bravo.
Please download this program and keep it running for entry to the exhibit.
Are you tracking me?
Please download this program and keep it running for entry to the exhibit. Thank you.
How long do I have to wait here?
Ma'am, be patient.
But I really don't understand what this program...
Ma'am, please wait.
For what?
Until it is time.
Excuse me? Excuse me,
Ma'am.
Thank you. Officer Aquinas, can I be of assistance?
There's a one Bravo and she needs an escort.
Okay. Ma'am, this way, please. Welcome to our National Museum of the Unforeseen Tragedy. What kind of device are you using to access today's exhibit?
I'm using a 2020 MacBook Air.
Wow, vintage. I haven't seen one of those in ages.
Hi, ma'am. I'm sorry I'm late.
Oh, GA, it's you. Seriously, no worries. I'll walk you back to the green room.
Sorry, I must have gotten turned around back there.
Seriously, it's not a problem at all.
Stuck in traffic, huh?
Dead GPS.
Uh-huh. So you're singing tonight, huh?
Yes, the idea.
Good luck.
Thanks.
I'll escort him directly to the exhibit. No lobby for you, Mr. Harrison. I'm so glad that you're here. Like, here. It's like there's hope finally, you know?
Well, that's really kind of you to say.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? You'll be granted access to the exhibit momentarily. You may not, I repeat, may not make audio or video recordings.
If you possess an electronic device that was purchased after August 3rd, 2032, you may use it, but at your own risk.
If you possess an electronic device that was purchased before August 3rd, 2032, you are A-OK.
Again, you may not make audio or video recordings.
You will have 30 minutes to tour the exhibit.
Thank you kindly for your attention. You may now enter the exhibit.
Welcome to our Museum of the Unforeseen Tragedy. While America has faced daunting challenges in its recent past, we hope to capture the spirit of Americans moving forward, moving past the past by acknowledging and embracing the acts of heroism in the face of adversity. Each exhibit has been chosen to reflect the America we knew, the America we know, and the America we know we can be despite the unforeseen tragedies of the past and uncertainties of the future. E pluribus unum, and again, welcome.
Hi. Did you lose someone that day?
I lost 4 of my family.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
What happened?
After my cousin, she lived but then died at the hospital. Her children, they died.
I'm so sorry for your loss.
Thank you. They were on the mall, killed in the attack. I was there, yes. Were you?
I wasn't.
Count yourself lucky then.
I was not there, but I lost a friend there.
I'm very sorry to hear that. So you understand then. You know it will be with you always. It is a blessing that you are here.
Thank you.
Do you know any of the names on the wall? Yes. Are you okay? Not really, no.
Out of Many, 2008 to 2020. Nearly a decade into the 21st century, the United States was in some ways still recovering from the terror attacks of September 11th, 2001. Searching for both security and a sense of hope, Americans looked to new leaders to guide them in an increasingly confusing and tumultuous world. What began as a search for healing, however, appeared to revive the nation's culture wars and further split the American electorate. In August 2008, Republican presidential nominee John McCain tapped Alaska Governor Sarah Palin to be his running mate. Palin was considered to be an unconventional choice, but McCain's campaign staff believed that she would rally more women back to the Republican ticket.
I love those hockey moms. You know, they say the difference between a hockey mom and a pit bull? Lipstick.
Though McCain and Palin lost to Barack Obama and Joe Biden, Palin's political style and rhetoric inspired the emerging Tea Party movement and essentially paved the way for the election of Donald J. Trump in 2016. The 2016 presidential election pitted Republican nominee Donald J. Trump against Democratic nominee and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Clinton, who had defeated Senator Bernie Sanders for the nomination, was the first female presidential candidate of a major party. Clinton emphasized her extensive political experience, while Trump campaigned on a nationalist promise to make America great again.
Make America great again, and I'll add, greater than ever before. Thank you very much.
Trump won the election with 304 electoral votes to Clinton's 227, but lost the popular vote to Clinton by nearly 3 million votes. In 2019, the U.S. House of Representatives launched a series of hearings and impeachment investigations into President Donald J. Trump. On December 18, 2019, the House passed 2 articles of impeachment against the president. During the resulting Senate impeachment trial, the Senate voted to block witnesses from testifying, and on Wednesday, February 5, 2020, the Senate voted 53-47 in favor of acquitting Trump. In 1987, the repeal of the U.S. Federal Communication Commission's Fairness Doctrine helped usher in a new golden age of talk radio programming. The Fairness Doctrine had required that audiences be exposed to a variety of viewpoints and that those viewpoints be presented equitably. With the doctrine's repeal, partisan political programming, both from the left and the right and across media platforms, flourished well into the 21st century. On January 21st, 2017, over 1 million women and girls staged one of the nation's largest peaceful protests in Washington, D.C. These hats and shirts are a sample of those worn by protesters.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America. There is not a Black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States of America.
pretty amazing. It's like reliving the early 2000s all over again. I remember most of these events like it was yesterday. Have you gotten to see the campaign materials? I actually volunteered for some of those campaigns.
I'm speaking at the ceremony. If you don't mind, I just need to prepare.
And that's the end of the summer closeout at Teddy Bob's RVs. Come on and look for us at 1522 County Line Road in Camden under the giant stars and stripes. See y'all there.
You're listening to Straight Talk with John Doyle on Patriot Radio, WPAT. I'm John Doyle with you here on this Family Friday. Let's get back to the phones. We got Pam calling in from Fulton. How you doing, Pam?
How you doing, John? I just want to thank you for what you were saying about... Excuse me.
Take your time.
Sorry. My daughter, we raised her right. She was just the sweetest girl growing up. Smart girl. Got a scholarship. First in our family to go to college.
Oh, hell. That was your first mistake right there.
I just want to know what kind of liberal propaganda they're forcing on our kids because she's pregnant. She got pregnant and she said she's going to get an abortion. And I'm sorry, but we raised her up in faith and she knows that all life is precious and I'm on disability and my husband's out of work and I know that life is pain, but I'm sorry. You got to be responsible. She's got to be responsible for what she did.
You didn't raise a baby killer, Pam, did you?
No, we didn't.
Where's she now, Pam? She's still at school.
Tufts University. It's in Boston.
I'm going to ask you to stay on the air, Pam, so we can get some more information from you off the air. But in the meantime, my faithful listeners, I want you to sit tight and get ready. And Pam, we're going to get your girl back for you.
God bless you, John. We didn't know what to do. I knew you'd have an answer. Thank you.
This is it right here, ladies and gentlemen. This is what's important. Family, faith, and freedom. Am I right?
Of course you're right.
Tell me with whom you walk, and I will tell you who you are. Spanish proverb.
Excuse me. Thank you for being here. I'm Dr. Alicia Lapointe-Smith, the museum's acting director. I couldn't help but notice that you seem to be familiar with these artifacts. Were you at the march here in DC or one of the sister marches? I was here. It was an extraordinary day. Just extraordinary. You know, I'd love to hear more about your experiences there. And there's no need to make a decision now, but if you consider sharing your story for our oral history collection, I could put you in touch with one of our curators. Again, when and if you're ready. Well, I'll let you be. Thank you again for being here.
If you can keep it, 2020 to 2029. By the early 2020s, the United States had entered what one political pundit dubbed the decade of despair. A president unexpectedly stepped down to make way for a new one. Journalists were increasingly detained and questioned at ports of entry. Contagions, floods, droughts, and fires devastated communities across the nation. But in 2026, the 250th anniversary of American independence provided a much-needed, though brief, respite from the political, economic, and religious strife roiling the nation. In the spring of 2020, American journalist Tiana Larson was returning to the U.S. from Turkey after covering a story at the Turkey-Iran border. Upon discovering Larson's profession during routine questioning, a U.S. Customs and Border Protection agent detained her for additional screening. During Independence Day activities at Mar-a-Lago, President Trump proposed changes to the Declaration of Independence. During a rare press availability, Trump added his signature to a facsimile of the founding document. The 2022 hurricane season was more violent than initially forecast. Hurricane Bailey devastated the Gulf Coast, adversely affecting the fishing and tourism industries and nearly wiping out the state economies of Louisiana and Mississippi. The Texas and Florida economies were generally able to withstand much of the economic devastation, but not all of it. On November 1st, 2024, Starbucks introduced a limited edition Christmas Kwanzaa Holiday Spice Latte. The company launched the product to celebrate the season in all its many flavors. Urged by conservative political commentator J.T. Morse to take up arms for religious freedom, small groups of armed protesters blocked entry to Starbucks shops across the country. After 2 weeks, Starbucks renamed the drink Christmas Spice, and the protests ended. Citing a need for Americans to devote time to spiritual matters over material ones, President Mike Pence shut down the federal government for 2 weeks during the Christmas and New Year holidays. In the midst of a trying decade, Americans were ready to celebrate the nation's 250th anniversary of American independence. In 2026, voters in Kentucky overwhelmingly passed a referendum requiring all public school science teachers to adhere to a biblically based curriculum. In response, hundreds of science teachers walked off the job. Those who remained either followed the new curriculum to the letter or improvised ways to teach science secretly. Teacher Lynn Porter used this textbook cover, designed to resemble a Bible cover, to surreptitiously teach biology to her class of 10th graders. Taking their moniker from Carry Nation, the early 20th century radical of the temperance movement, the Open Carries devoted themselves to giving women ages 18 and older the right to openly carry guns in all 50 states. Founded in Seneca Falls, New York, the self-proclaimed independent women's militia was designed to counter the proliferation of Russian-backed Christian and white supremacist militias across the country. This leaflet is one of the hundreds that the Open Carries distributed at a Syracuse, New York Walmart in late 2028. In May 2029, Oklahoma's governor proposed that Texas conservatives who are unhappy with the Texas State Senate's flip to a Democratic majority secede from Texas and join Oklahoma. Several Texas referendums were passed, and the Texas Panhandle voted to secede from Texas, but not to join Oklahoma. The Panhandle seceded, named itself the Texas Republic, and declared Amarillo its capital. Poverty with security is better than plenty in the midst of fear and uncertainty. The town mouse and the country mouse, the Aesop for children.
We all knew the referendum would pass. You had to be delusional to think otherwise. I had friends from grad school who were begging me to move back to New Hampshire and teach there. But I was stubborn. By the time the referendum passed, we had just begun to teach in single-sex classrooms. I taught boys biology in the morning and girls biology in the afternoon. I was already breaking the rules by teaching the same content to the boys and the girls. We were all subversive. One of my colleagues made the book covers, and the kids covered the books themselves. We all knew it was dangerous. Early on, we were lucky. It helped that we were a public charter school. The kids' families essentially self-selected by sending them to our school. My kids were bright and curious, and it goes without saying that the quickest way to get kids to do something is to deny them the right to do it.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news now from our nation's capital. There have been unconfirmed reports of a mass shooting and bombing at the Lincoln Memorial. We do not yet have words of casualties. Again, this is unconfirmed, and just a moment. I believe we have our Frank Esterman in Washington with some details. Frank?
Yes, Claudia. I was just leaving the White House briefing room. We all got worried. Now, I tried to get a cab to get down to the Lincoln Memorial, but as you can imagine, the emergency response was massive. It is massive, so I essentially ran all the way from the White House down to Constitution Avenue. Got the moment the police are turning all this way. We can't get anywhere near the mall even. So I'll see what I can do and get back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you, Frank. You stay safe down there. Please stay with us here for live-breaking coverage of this unfolding situation at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C.
The attack, April 19th, 2030. On April 19th, 2030, Michael Earl Ritter, a longtime political activist, drove from his home in suburban Washington, D.C. to the city's monumental core. Parking his car on 23rd Street Northwest, he walked to the Lincoln Memorial, entered it, approached the Lincoln statue, and attempted to climb it. Before officers of the United States Park Police could apprehend him, Ritter opened fire, then deployed his suicide vest, killing hundreds of innocent bystanders. Journalism is sometimes called the first rough draft of history. News of the attack on April 19th was reported both by professional journalists and everyday Americans with cell phones. First reports of the attack came from bystanders at the scene. Mainstream media outlets used these reports to augment their coverage of the attack. Ryan Hirota, a food vendor and longtime volunteer EMT, was parked in a newly designated food truck zone when a suicide bomber opened fire, then detonated himself just a block away at the Lincoln Memorial. Hirota used his truck's sign as a makeshift stretcher to transport victims to ambulances that jammed Constitution Avenue during the emergency response. Among the thousands of personal belongings recovered from the devastation of the attack were this pitch pipe and fragment of a choral arrangement of God Bless America. They belonged to Trey Melendez, a 16-year-old high school student from Salinas, California. Among the victims of the attack were dogs, both police dogs and pet dogs. U.S. Park Police Sergeant Derek Bradley and his dog Gus had been patrolling the Lincoln Memorial when the shooting began. Sergeant Bradley was shot and killed before he was able to deploy his weapon. Gus was killed in the explosion. Just before noon on April 19th, 2030, Sebastian De Kado, a tourist from Senegal, took a photo of himself, a selfie, near the Lincoln Memorial. This picture was taken just seconds before the attack. Mr. De Kado survived. Out of an abundance of caution, law enforcement officials detained a number of bystanders and foreign tourists, including Mr. De Kado, before they returned to their home countries several days later.
Life takes funny turns. When I was in college, and even when I was in law school, I was a volunteer EMT. I loved it. And then I became a lawyer. That's all I did with my life. I hated it. After a couple of years, I quit my job and I bought a food truck. I loved the new life I was living, meeting people from all around the world, feeding them, getting to know their concerns. It was the purest form of public service. That day was horrible. I saw so many awful things I haven't even seen when I was the EMT. Mass casualties, children, young mothers, older man, and even dog that somebody was walking. My old training kicked in, and I didn't think at that time, but I just looked for something I could use as a stretcher and got to work. It was the worst day of my life. But I thank God every day that I was there when it happened because I was able to help in my own small way.
I want to hide something near the ground. It's There's nothing. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. I can't hear anything. I don't know where I am. There was a blast or maybe the bomb. Yeah, I think it was. Can you hear me? Because I'm talking, but I can't hear anything. I'm okay. I can't feel anything. I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
No problem. I'm sorry about that, brother.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Keep the faith.
Wow. Kind of a gut punch. Excuse me, I'll leave you alone.
Oh no, it's okay.
One Bravo.
Jesus!
Sorry. Are you okay?
Yeah, excuse me.
The Aftermath, 2030 to the present. The months and years after the attack brought both healing and heartbreak. Security precautions, already tight, became even tighter. Free speech was curtailed. In some pockets of the nation, artists and journalists were targeted and abducted by militia groups. Climate change affected every portion of the country, from fires in the West to floods in the Midwest and Gulf Coast. Still, in the midst of the difficulties, there were moments of grace and healing. President Elise Denton's speech to the nation immediately after the attack was noted for its calming strength. Congress moved forward to do the business of the nation, and speakers and storytellers lifted weary spirits with words of inspiration. Immediately after the attack, the Lincoln Memorial was sealed off for collection of evidence, then closed for repair. Scaffolding was quickly erected around the memorial and covered with a black scrim. Guarded by around-the-clock military presence, the memorial and the reflecting pool remained closed for a year. Only minutes before President Elise Denton addressed the nation about the attack, she made a few last-minute changes to her speech. Activist and author Eric Patterson has spent his career speaking about courage and resilience in the face of adversity. He is the author of Madam President, An Alternate History, and Everyday Heroes, Stories from the Resistance, a history of the resistance movement that arose out of the law and order sweeps at amusement parks in the 2020s. Patterson's TEDx Cleveland talk, The 8 Masks We All Wear, is one of the top 5 most viewed TEDx talks in the world, with over 28 million views. On August 3rd, 2032, Russia's long-dormant Fancy Bear cyber espionage group launched a major hack into American utilities. Electrical grids on the eastern seaboard and the west coast crashed. Numerous heat-related deaths resulted in New York City, and fires devastated pockets of California. Power was restored within a week. On September 11th of that year, Fancy Bear followed up by launching the Happy Time virus, which targeted all cell phones in the U.S. As a precaution, all cell phones manufactured after August 3rd were declared unstable and open to further hacking. Older, safer cell phones, like this iPhone 6S, became a viable alternative for those who could obtain them. The intense media coverage of Ryan Hirota's heroic actions at the Lincoln Memorial in 2030 captivated the distraught nation. To Americans searching for signs of hope and healing, Hirota was the epitome of selflessness and courage in the face of extreme adversity. Some urged Hirota to run for public office, and in 2032, the former lawyer and food truck vendor became one of the youngest people elected to the U.S. Senate, representing the state of Connecticut. Not long after the attack of 2030, singer-songwriter Sean Harrison recorded a cover of America the Beautiful that quickly became a hit and a comforting hymn. In 2032, Harrison launched a year-long tour but faced protesters and threats of violence when he admitted in an interview that he had voted for President Elise Denton. Wrapping up his tour in his hometown of Amarillo, Texas, Harrison was arrested and held as a political prisoner in the Texas Republic. Supporters rallied to his defense and camped at the Texas Republic border. Harrison was released in 2037. We will hold you up. We will cry with you. We will patch your broken hearts and pray with you. President Elise Denton.
So that's the teacher. Finally, for the 8th mask we all wear. The hero. Now I see a few of you out there who are thinking, are you kidding me? I'm terrified every waking minute. And when I'm not awake, all I've got are nightmares. And yeah, that's all true. I'm right there with you. But I'm also here to tell you that when you're done putting on and taking off all other 7 masks, the child, the bully, the narcissist, the angel, the devil, the artist, the teacher, you're facing one question and one question only. Am I willing to put on this mask and be the hero of my own life? Am I willing to wear this mask until I die? I'll let you sit with that for a minute.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back. I'm Hope Z, and this is Climate Action Radio, KPVN. I'll be taking your calls in a minute, but before that, here's the quick hit report. The wet spring is continuing to have an impact on our Minnesota farmers, even as we head into August. The corn crop is rated 42% in the goods category, down 2% from last week. For those of you who are praying, pray harder, I guess.
Excuse me? Oh, sorry, it's you.
Not at all. This is beautifully done.
Oh, thank you. I mean, I'm not taking credit for it. I mean, I'll tell our curators. They'll love that. I mean, not love, just...
I know what you mean.
Do you mind if for the website? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Remind me of your name again.
Jace.
Jace, of course. It was a pleasure meeting you.
A pleasure meeting you too, sir.
Senator Ryan Hirota, good to see you. So glad you could make it here tonight.
Senator Hirota, this here is Doug Christoff. He, along with Dr. Frank Trezza and Dr. Kimberly Kelly, made this museum possible with their generosity.
Have you had a chance to see many of the artifacts? So you're still taking it in, I must say. It's quite an exhibit.
Look, I hate to talk politics, but are things getting any better?
In Congress, they're getting better, or we're moving along, depending on how you look at it.
Oh, so Congress still exists then?
That old story popped up again, hasn't it? Yes, sir. Congress still exists.
Well, never thought I'd say this, but thank God.
Indeed. It was very nice speaking with you. Excuse me.
I'm Dr. Alicia Lapointe Smith. acting director of the Museum of the Unforeseen Tragedy. This painting, called The Hangers, is, I believe, one of the most mysterious and masterful examples of survival art. The work becomes alternately more puzzling and terrifying the longer one looks at it. The 4 plastic hangers, all at odd angles, appear to have been jostled by someone or something. At first glance, this appears to be an empty closet. Empty, that is, but for the observer in the closet, whom we never see. Could it be that we, the viewers, are in hiding? This painting is also a terrifying visual pun. The artist created this work in tribute to the 4 journalists who were sentenced to death by hanging in the Texas Republic in late 2033. We now know that artist Liv Soroyan, painting under the name Simmons, created this work while in hiding. The Hangers is both dark and light, terrifying and uplifting. It is both a memento mori and a testament to the resilience of the human spirit.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The dedication ceremony will begin momentarily. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Trask Foundation's Humanitarian of the Year, recording artist Sean Harrison.
Beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountain majesty, above the fruited plains, America, America. God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years. Thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
Please welcome the acting director of our National Museum of the Unforeseen Tragedy, Dr. Alicia Lapointe Smith.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. We are here tonight to dedicate a museum. We are here to remember, and we are here to build a new future for our fractured nation. On April 19th, 2030, as the dust settled, many of us doubted that America would survive. And now, 10 years later, it almost seems as if those doubts are hardening into certainty. But we find hope in the most ordinary things. Sunlight glowing through the cracks of a hidden door, the healing touch of a stranger that becomes a friend, a song that becomes an anthem for the oppressed. It is in that spirit of resilience that we come together tonight. I am awed by your courage in being here and grateful for your support as we begin to forge a new future together. Memory by memory. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege and honor to introduce to you President Melinda Robles.
Dr. LaPointe Smith, honored guests, blessed families of the fallen. In those final terrifying moments at the Lincoln Memorial, there was panic and there was terror. Parents ran towards their wounded children. The acrid smell of gunfire hung in the warm and sickly sweet April air. A deranged terrorist coldly reloaded his weapon, and a gravely injured young man named Trey Melendez gathered all of his strength and courage in order to run towards certain death to save his teacher and classmates. We all remember where we were that day 10 years ago. That day has such a scar that has not yet faded. We are still recovering, but we will never forget. We survived that day in 2030, and we will survive all of the troubles that are yet to come our way. Because yes, there will be troubles, and yes, we will survive them. Because we are strong, because we are resilient, because we are Americans. Page 5 in your memorial program as we read together. A prayer for healing. Eternal God, shepherd us through these shadowy nights that try our soul. Though we are made in your image, we are still human, so fragile and easily shattered. Heal our lands, O Lord, bless our sprawling deserts and our dying orchards. Sweeten our bittered rivers. Comfort every damaged creature, so that even when we are afraid, we may put our whole trust in you. So may it be, forever and ever. Amen. It saddens me deeply that David and I cannot be with you on this solemn occasion, but know that we're with you in mind, soul, and spirit, and that we will be touring the museum when we return from the Stockholm Emergency Climate Summit. May God bless you all, and God bless America.
My name is Elizabeth O'Neill. I used to be Trey Melendez's teacher. Trey was only 16 years old, and he had a wicked sense of humor and a sharp, inquisitive mind. He loved to sing, and he joined our school choir. I saw something special in Trey, and I pushed him to work hard, and he did, becoming our choir's first ever student co-director. And under his leadership, our choir won a coveted spot in a national choir competition. And we flew to Washington, D.C. on April 17, 2030, 2 days before the competition. It was a long flight, and about halfway through, as we flew over the Midwest, we hit some bad turbulence. My students were terrified. Most of them have never flown before. But next to me, I could hear Trey speaking quietly to his friend Sasha. "Don't worry," he said to her. "It feels like we're going to fall out of the sky, but we won't." It's just like a bumpy road, like in a car. Let's pretend we're in a car. And they did. For the rest of the flight, the two of them looked out their window and pointed out the imaginary motels, horses, and McDonald's along our highway in the sky. And I have to admit, I'm a pretty seasoned flyer, and yet I found myself following Trey's advice. After we landed, I leaned over to him. "You've done this a couple of times before, haven't you?" I said. And he said to me, "No, ma'am. This is my first time on a plane." The day before the competition, it was Trey who insisted that we hold our first impromptu rehearsal on the steps at the Lincoln Memorial. It was Trey who led us in singing "God Bless America," and it was Trey who shielded me from the bullets when the shots rang out. Several months after the tragedy, Trey's family received a call from one of the heroic first responders. Trey's backpack had been recovered. Among his belongings were fragments of sheet music and his pitch pipe. Ordinary and simple objects that for Trey were the source of so much joy. They are now on display here at the museum. The remaining symbols of a voice that was silenced far too soon. I don't believe in omens, but as a former English teacher, I see metaphors in everything. Trey had the strength and grace to handle that Midwestern turbulence, and I hope and pray that our nation will do the same. Thank you.
My name is Sebastian De Kado. I was born in Dakar, Senegal. In April 2030, I came to Washington, D.C. to see the famous cherry trees and to visit my cousin, Nadine. She lived in Falls Church, Virginia with her family. That day on the tidal basin was beautiful. Everywhere were clouds and clouds of cherry blossoms. Nadine said the trees bloomed late that year, so I was very lucky to see them. I could not believe how beautiful the city was. I took pictures of everything. On our way to the Lincoln Memorial, we got hot dogs. Nadine and the children ran a race up the memorial steps, and as I waited for them to come back down, I took a selfie. Nadine had just become an American citizen. The flag, the one I'm holding in that picture, was hers. It was the one she had gotten at a naturalization ceremony. The shooting began right after I took the picture, and then the explosion. It was chaos. I ran to find Nadine, lying at the bottom of the stairs. Her children, her beautiful children, were gone. Nadine was alive. One of her legs was missing. I had prayed that she could not see what had happened to her kids. There was a man beside her, the hot dog man. He had taken off his shirt, and he was tying it around what remained of her leg. I ran towards Nadine with the flag still gripped so tightly in my hand so I wouldn't lose it. And suddenly, out of nowhere, a man tackled me. I was handcuffed and thrown into a van. They thought it was me who had set off the bomb, even though it was obvious who had done it. No one would tell me what had happened to Nadine. Nobody would tell me if she was alive or dead. I was questioned for 3 days and 3 nights. On the 4th day, I was sent back to Senegal. And over the next several months, as the United States disintegrated, I could not get so much as a phone call or an email or a letter from Nadine. I had prayed that she was still alive. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, I get a phone call from a man named Ryan. I was suspicious. But then he told me that he was the man who was there that day. The hot dog man. He was so caring and so gentle as he gave me the news. Nadine had survived the explosion, but had died at the hospital. I did not know how Ryan found me, but I knew that it was a miracle because finally I could be at peace knowing that this beautiful man did not let her die alone. Ryan stayed in touch with me. He helped me obtain a student visa so I could enroll at the University of Connecticut. He saw me graduate. He became my mentor. He became my friend. I am immensely grateful to the man who we all know now as United States Senator Ryan Hirota. Senator Hirota, you are my brother, now and forever.
You never know what would happen in the blink of an eye. Sometimes the wind changes direction, you get snow on Christmas. Sometimes you turn a corner and fall in love. And sometimes, in the midst of chaos, you find a family you've never realized you had. That day in April, as the world fell apart, my heart broke open. I looked into Nadine's eyes, and I could see that she knew all her children were gone. It haunts me to this day. Nadine made me promise that I'll find her cousin. She recited his name and his cell phone number over and over again that I memorized it. Sebastian De Kado, 221-022-422-4242. I called him. I didn't know it at that time, but I briefly became a subject in an investigation. Why was I calling a potential suspect, and how did we know each other? It made no sense. It was abundantly clear who had perpetrated this act of evil. But the fear that has overtaken our country was driving us to do terrible things to each other, to accuse each other, to hate each other. I despised what was happening to the country I loved so fiercely. But I decided to do whatever I could to help heal the wounds that had been inflicted through public service. I know, a naive concept. I feel great kinship with my friend Sebastian. We were both sons of parents that wanted nothing but the best for their children. Both had led lives of hard work and sacrifice. When I was 10, I was working at my parents' restaurant in New Haven, Connecticut. When Sebastian was 8, he was helping his father at the Dakar Central Market, yearning to come to the place he said, who you can be whoever you wanted to be. Sebastian, you came to America with a great dream. Though you lived through a nightmare, your devotion to this country was severely tested, but your faith in it remained steadfast. You studied diligently at the University of Connecticut. You continued your studies at the history and civics of our great nation. Sebastian, it is my privilege to administer to you the oath of allegiance of the United States of America. Please, raise your right hand and repeat after me. I hereby declare on oath
I hereby declare on oath
that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure
that I absolutely and entirely renounce and abjure
all allegiance and fidelity to any foreign prince, state, or sovereignty, or to any separated state or commonwealth, of whom or which I have heretofore been a subject or a citizen, to support and defend the laws of the United States of America, against all enemies, foreign or domestic. And I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion. So help me God. Congratulations, my friend, on becoming an American citizen.
Every loss brings with it infinite memories. By building and dedicating this museum, we hope that we can shine a light not only on the achingly beautiful stories of heroism and resilience and love, but also on the difficult stories of heartbreak and separation, and yes, even violence. Because for all our faults, we Americans have always strived to improve and learn and make our imperfect union just a bit more perfect. We've always been a work in progress, and though it has taken us scores of years to improve, when we finally do, it is glorious. Thank you for being here. Your presence means the world to us. I kindly ask that you indulge us a few moments while we set up for our State of the Union panel discussion. As we do that, please welcome once again Mr. Sean Harrison, who so beautifully opened our ceremony. Sean?
It's a thing, you never know what you're capable of until you're tested. I mean, I never knew that I'd be tested 10 ways to Sunday like I was in the artist re-education camp for 4 years. But the crazy thing is I wrote more music during that time than I ever did before. Anyway, here's one I wrote after I got out. Some of y'all might know this one. If you do, feel free to sing along.
I was a man who loved his nation. I was strong and I was free. Then one April day of devastation stole my liberty. I spent 4 long years in darkness. I didn't think I could make it through. Then they turned me loose and I headed north. That's when I met you. Said, Texas sure ain't like Vermont. You said, no cowboy, it's not. But life ain't about getting what you want. It's about wanting what you got. And as we sat there talking in the evening summer breeze, said all the things I love and miss are only memories. And you said bottle rockets on the 4th of July, the Northern California sky. I said driving south on 95, just happy to be alive. I said Super Bowl, you said mac and cheese. Well, that nearly brought me to my knees. And then you leaned in for a kiss, my little miss, my little miss.
Thank you, Sean. That was wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin our discussion now. Our State of the Union panel discussion is brought to you by the Zuckerberg Family Foundation, the Trask Foundation, and Dr. Wickham Avery and Julia Austin. We are most grateful for their support. We are joined tonight by 3 extraordinary individuals. Eric Patterson is a longtime activist, author, and the current executive director of the American Transparency Coalition. His TEDx talk, The Late Mask We All Wear, became the most watched TEDx talk in 2031. And I hope you all have a chance to see the clip of it that we have here on display. And returning to speak with us are United States Senator Ryan Hirota and Mr. Sebastian De Kado. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I'm looking forward to our conversation. Tonight, we'll be exploring a question that I'm sure we may all have been asking ourselves over the past few years, and that is, how did we get here? We'll begin with a bit of discussion up here on the panel, and then we'll open it up to you all for questions and comments. We have our lovely docents, Mr. Rainey, Ms. Aquinas, you're linked in. Yes, wonderful. Gentlemen, you are beacons of human resilience. And I do want to get to our main topic for the evening, but first I'd like to back it up a bit. One of our goals here at the museum is to preserve and protect historical records for future generations of Americans. Sorry, technical difficulty. We are preserving memory, if you will. And so, to break the ice, I'd like to ask, what is your earliest memory?
Are we talking about happy memories or sad memories?
The earliest you can remember.
My mother's deployment to Iraq. Harry Potter, SpaghettiOs.
Oh yes, SpaghettiOs. They sustained me at college.
I do have to agree about SpaghettiOs. They were my guilty pleasure in grad school. Senator Hirota, your earliest memory?
I vividly remember lilacs, deep snow, the kind that a little kid can get lost in. I remember it reached past my knees, if you could believe that. Stumbling, falling, stumbling, wondering how long I can stand there till I freeze to the ground.
I asked this question in order to gain some deeper insights into who you are. What makes you, you? Does what you remember form your personality, perhaps form your identity? Or vice versa? Does who you are determine what it is that you choose to remember? Is memory a choice?
No, if it's were, I would choose to forget many things or to change them in a way that makes them less painful.
To Mr. De Kado's point, if I may push back a bit.
By all means.
We have an obligation, a moral and historical obligation to remember the pain and then to reshape it, to transform it into something actionable. Protest, direct action, art, music.
Ooh, now I'm thinking of the singer-songwriters of the 1960s, a part of the anti-war movement, the advent of rap in the late 20th century.
Exactly. The painter, Liv Soroyan, Sean Harrison, who's with us tonight. My point is, it's a radical act to transform pain into power.
Of course, Mr. Patterson is leaving out one very crucial activist and writer, himself.
Oh, yes.
Dr. LaPointe Smith, I wonder if I could circle back to something you briefly mentioned in your introduction.
Of course.
Resilience. You've mentioned resilience. This is a whole nutmeg. It's spicy, it's delicious, and it's tough as nail. As a proud son of the state of Connecticut, the nutmeg state, I can tell you more than you probably want to know about this little fruit. And yes, it is a fruit. And briefly, if I may, the crucial point about the nutmeg, it's not one spice, but two. The name and the fragrance we're familiar with derives from the inner seed, but the outer covering, that's a spice too. It's called mace. It's slightly sweeter and a lot more delicate than the nutmeg inside. Two spice and one seed. It's friction and energy that makes this little spice the miraculous and fragrant spice we love so well. Under duress, with a bit of culinary violence, these two spices blend into one whole, e pluribus unum, out of many, one. Apologies, Dr. LaPointe Smith. I should have cleared that up with you.
It's fine.
You literally walk around with the nutmeg in your pocket?
Right next to my pocket constitution, such as it is.
My friend here is the king of metaphor.
Just so I'm clear, you're saying that violence is required to unite us.
I don't think I said that.
Oh, but you said that blending the nutmeg requires culinary violence.
Well, let's call it friction. It requires work to create a nation, a bit of creative friction.
I mean, this nation was founded in violence, so I absolutely get your point.
I didn't mean to make that exact point.
But you did, and I kind of find it brilliantly honest.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Gentlemen, thank you for your extraordinary insights into my question. Now I'd like to bring it back to our main topic for the evening, and that is, how did we get here? Artists and intellectuals are still being harassed. Journalists are still being searched and detained at ports of entry. One could argue that we should have seen this coming.
We saw this coming. Generations of us saw this coming. This conversation didn't start in 2030.
If I may, I remain cautiously optimistic that the ship of state is righting itself, slowly but surely.
Until the next tsunami hits, if we're right in this metaphor.
I'm telling you, he's the king of metaphor.
Mr. De Kado, I'm curious about your thoughts. What have you noticed or wondered about? How do you think we got here?
It began, I think, with the Electoral College. Small populations in empty states deciding who becomes the president? Iowa counts more than California. Madness! And that was even before the death of the Iowa caucuses.
It's interesting that you bring up Iowa because I was just about to mention your first book, Mr. Patterson.
Democracy.
Hacking Democracy. Oh, I'm so sorry I interrupted you.
Oh, no, not at all. Hacking Democracy, How Russia Killed the Iowa Caucus. Unfortunately, it's out of print.
No.
Sadly, yes.
Well, I'll treasure my copy even more.
I will as well. It's quite a book.
Thank you.
I must say, this country confounds me. It is welcoming except when it isn't. It makes promises and then breaks them. It breaks your heart.
Yes, this is who we are. This is who we've always been. Senator Hirota, you've spoken many times about your mother having to flee persecution in Ethiopia only to face racism here in the United States. That was what, about 50 years ago? You also speak about your grandparents on your father's side who were incarcerated in FDR internment camps. That was what, almost 100 years ago. How far do we have to go back? This is who we've been since 1619 when the first Africans arrived here against their will in a place that's not even 100 miles from where we're sitting right now. Mr. De Kado, you bring up the Electoral College, rooted in slavery, a truth that isn't generally acknowledged by most people. The southern states outright admitted that direct elections would be to their disadvantage. So 1/3 of the people living in the South had no voting rights. Why? Because they were enslaved. And so the 3/5 compromise comes to the rescue, and boom, we have the Electoral College. I mean, people think the Electoral College is an actual place, an actual physical place. They think it's a university.
That cannot be true. I cannot believe that is true.
In 2028, the most popular Google search was, "Where's the Electoral College?" This is who we are. And I think the sooner that we agree that this is who we are, the closer we'll be to moving forward. Until then, no.
You raise an essential, if troubling question, Mr. Patterson. Can we Americans agree on the facts of who we are?
Now there's a poisonous word, facts.
Really, poisonous.
Let's consider this. Whose facts are correct?
Tell me about that.
Okay, here's a fact. I grew up in Cleveland, which is a city in Ohio. Here's another fact. I grew up drinking pop. Senator Hirota, you grew up in New Haven, which is a city in Connecticut, correct?
Correct.
You grew up drinking
soda.
Wrong. It's pop.
Soda.
No pop.
Soda.
No pop. And that's how nations die.
Well, all joking aside, I wonder how many people still identifies as American. Well, for example, remembering what happened to Texas.
The Texas Republic, yes.
Texas. Oh, that was a hell of a thing.
Oh, yes, Mr. Harrison. If you could hold
all I saw of it was from the inside of a prison cell. So
I know that many of us have heard the stories.
Yeah, hell, Texas, that could be an entire panel discussion.
Actually, that's been scheduled for August.
Oh, well, I'm free in August if you'd like to invite me back.
We'll certainly keep you in mind.
Yeah, you wouldn't have thought they'd have pulled it off, the panhandle breaking away like that.
Yes, and we'll certainly address that in our Texas panel later this year.
Well, all right.
Well, it's funny. As long as you're in Texas, not in Texas Republic, as long as you're in Dallas or Austin or San Antonio, you never even realized there was any difference.
You see, that's the problem right there. To y'all, it's like Texas never even happened.
I'm not sure I entirely agree with that. Are you familiar with the work of Dr. Marshall Gates?
I can't say that I am.
His Texas research is exemplary.
Uh-huh.
And may I say, Mr. Harrison, I'm sure I'm not the only one who's just glad you made it out.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. And like I said, we'll definitely keep you in mind for our Texas panel in August.
Well, all right. Oh, and Mr. Patterson, it's Coke.
Senator Hirota, I think you were making a larger point earlier in this discussion.
I was saying, yes, of course. I was saying, in addition to Texas, there are less formal breakaways, like red state, blue state divide, white collar, blue collar, religious and secular. And I think fear is the thing that's driving us into smaller and tighter corners. We may call ourselves American in the aggregate, but none of us really wants to share that American identity with the people we disagree with. It pains me to say this because we've been down this road over and over and over again. And I think this is where we are. And maybe, like you said earlier, Mr. Patterson, maybe this is who we are.
I have never heard you sound so pessimistic.
I'm trying like hell to stay cautiously optimistic.
Again, I think it comes down to this question of American identity. And this is obviously a small sample, but among the four of us here on this panel, we are four unique individuals with four diverse backgrounds, four unique ways of looking at the world, and American, all, each with our own American story.
If I may add something, an American story, if you will.
Of course.
How many of you have been to Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio? Some of you? Well, my family had a tradition. Every year when one of us graduated from college or high school, we'd go to Cedar Point amusement park to ride Millennium Force, which was their original big roller coaster. This was 2022. I just finished undergrad. I was there with my parents, my sister, and my brother. My dad would tell us stories to scare us about Millennium Force. Like if you drank a pop before you went on it, you had to keep your eyes closed, or else the G-force would make the pop shoot out your eyes. My mother, she would roll her eyes because she flew combat missions in Iraq. Yet you could still never get her on a roller coaster. And so on that summer day, we're at the amusement park, and it seems like half of Ohio's there. We're in the line for the roller coaster, looking up at the first drop, and a militia group comes up. Some of them are state police. There's a handful of National Guard, and there's no question Klan's in the mix. They've all got orders from the governor. Keep law and order at the amusement parks. I don't think I need to spell out what that means. And to this day, nobody knows how it started. But things got ugly very quickly. Anytime a militia group comes up, your options are limited. You either ignore them and possibly die, or you fight back and maybe live. Ohio's open carry, and my mother's a veteran, so she's armed. She takes out 3 of those assholes, including the Grand Dragon of Ohio. She's defending her family, she's standing her ground, and she's still arrested. There's a sham trial, and she dies in prison. So that's one story of how we got here. That's my American story.
Your mother was a hero. She was a warrior.
She was.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. That was extraordinarily powerful. And for those of you who are not familiar with amusement park law and order sweeps of the late 2020s, I highly recommend Mr. Patterson's book, Heroes of the Resistance.
Thank you, and it's still in print.
If I may, I'd like to pick up a thread of conversation that you began earlier in this discussion.
Of course.
Do we have a national response?
Excuse me, Dr. LaPointe-Smith. I have a question.
Oh, Elizabeth, we're not quite ready for questions yet.
But I have a question.
Yes, and I promise you, I'll call on you when it's time. And for those of you who have questions or comments, rest assured we'll allow plenty of time for them. I'd like to briefly discuss, then close out the discussion that Mr. Patterson brought up earlier, that we have a national responsibility to remember.
I am not so certain that as a nation, we are a culture of remembrance. I am not so certain that we value memory. We are always moving forward, leaving the old in pursuit of the new. We are a nation of inventors, of travelers. We are restless. It is one of the things that I love best about this country. It is also one of the things that confounds me. We do not like to remember. We do like to move on.
As acting director of this museum, may I say, ouch.
I am so sorry. I meant no disrespect. I am certain the museum will be successful.
I understand, and I generally do agree with you, Mr. De Kado. We're a nation that likes to remember and move on, shall we say. Mm-hmm. Senator Hirota, you look as if you have something you'd like to add.
By show of hands, simply by show of hands, how many people in here remember the attack of 9/11? I do not. I was born in 2001, and I heard stories from my father who told me stories about the attack. 9/11 changed everything, he said. Never forget. Immediately after the attack, we were kinder to each other, looking out for our neighbor, looking out our strangers in the eyes and asking each other how we were. And then everything changed even more. You can see it in our community. You can see it in our neighborhood. Our next door neighbor's car got set on fire during Ramadan. Our other neighbor enlisted and died in Afghanistan. We must never forget 9/11 changed everything. But now, 40 years later, we still take off our shoes at the airport, but none of us remember why. So I would just like to warn us against complacency, not in a safety or security sense, but a moral sense. We owe the victim of the Lincoln Memorial attack the gift of memory, and we must never forget their sacrifice.
Thank you, Senator Hirota. And may I say that we here at the museum intend to do just that every single day. With every artifact recovered, with every financial gift received, we are daily reminded of the responsibility entrusted to us by the American people. Now, before I open this up for audience questions and comments, is there anything any of you would like to add? I know this is a wide-ranging discussion.
I had hoped we would talk about the collection itself. I realized that might have been something you planned for a later panel discussion.
And remember, text it.
We will, Mr. Harrison. I promise you. Mr. De Kado, to answer your question, yes, that is indeed a possibility, but I imagine that folks in the audience may have questions about the collection as well. So now I'd like to open it up to you all who I'm sure have questions or comments about the museum collection. Ah, Elizabeth. Thank you for your patience and understanding.
Okay, thank you. Is this supposed to be a museum about reconciliation? I've seen the artifacts and I'm not sure I'm understanding your approach.
That's an excellent question, and frankly one we've heard more than once. As you can imagine, we've received hundreds of artifacts from all over this nation. Some of them, for example Trey's pitch pipe, are essential to the telling of this story.
I understand that, and that's my point. I don't see much evidence of reconciliation. Strife, yes. Argument and destruction, yes, but not so much about reconciliation.
Well, may I be honest with you?
Please.
As you can imagine, we are carefully considering what is being included in our collection. We are faced with an unusual dilemma in this case, because one cannot reach reconciliation without first acknowledging the conflict necessitating that reconciliation. Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you for that probing question, Elizabeth.
Before we get more questions, I wonder if you can address something.
Of course.
You said we have to acknowledge conflict before reaching reconciliation.
Yes.
So I wonder why you haven't included the Ritter video in the collection.
The video before the attack.
Martyrdom video.
Please don't refer to it as the martyrdom video.
Long discussions about that and ultimately decided against showing it for this evening.
So you do have it.
We do have it, but we've opted not to show it. As we're all aware, the contents are particularly sensitive.
Politically sensitive.
Politics had nothing to do with the decision. It was a late decision. It was an institutional decision.
It's your institution's job to pay attention to what happened, to what's still happening in the world.
I don't think showing it tonight is the right place nor time.
It's extraordinarily complicated.
This is literally a panel discussion about how we got here. That video illustrates one way of how we got here.
Excuse me.
Or maybe the institution is censoring material. Or then we've got a bigger problem on our hands.
That's absolutely not the case.
Or maybe your job's on the line. Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I get it.
It is a difficult thing to see. It is not a comfortable thing
if
to
we're
watch.
at that point again where we can't handle discomfort, then it's all over for real this time.
Excuse me. Excuse me, ladies and gentlemen.
Why did you bring that up?
She said the museum has it. There's an expectation it will be shown.
It brings a whole host of complication.
Exactly.
What do you think?
It's complicated.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we show the video, I would like to make it clear that we here at the museum in no way intend to make this uncomfortable for you, politically or otherwise. If you would prefer to not see the video, which does contain some sensitive topics, Officer Aquinas will escort you out briefly. We welcome your return for the remainder of our question and answer portion for the evening.
My name is Michael Earl Ritter. I'm recording this statement on April 18th, 2030. By now, you will see what it is I've done. The action I took was neither rash nor impulsive because I've been waiting a long goddamn time for things to change. I watched as the corporate elites outsourced my job and decimated the economy. I watched as California burned and Louisiana drowned. I watched illusion replace reason. I watched my parents lose their minds and happily swim in a cesspool of propaganda. Libby. And on the occasions when I dared engage them in conversation, to honor their side of the story, to listen and listen and listen until my ears bled, I gave up. Because what's the point, right? Liberty, stop it. Why is it always on us to be the better people, to understand them. Understand them. We came from them. They said they wanted a better life for us, and when we left our dying, addicted, shitty hometowns, they changed the locks, armored up, and wondered why we stopped coming home for Christmas. I watched a president make us promises that she couldn't keep. That the wall would come down, that migrant families would be reunited, that this whole goddamn country would finally be reunited. Spoiler alert, we're not reunited, and I'm done watching. May God, or whatever you believe in, have mercy on our shattered nation.
And now I'll open this up for questions and comments. Yes, please. Thank you, Officer Aquinas.
Dr. LaPointe-Smith, before we get into any additional questions, I would like to make an observation.
Please.
I think it behooves us to remember that Ritter was an extremist with a leftist view. That's true, and surely not a liberal.
Well, hell, we're getting into that again. Just leave it alone, sir. All due respect, leave it alone.
I hear you, Mr. Harrison. I just think it's crucial that we...
Ritter was a terrorist, full stop.
Of course he was a terrorist, but it's important to distinguish how he came about the views that
Nobody
he did.
gives a crap, sir. Distinction without difference. Extremists with leftist views, extremists with conservative views, liberal, conservative, right-wing. Do you think I bothered to ask who my captors voted for? A monster's a fucking monster. Pardon my language.
No need to apologize, Mr. Harrison. I think someone's trying to link in. Yes?
Why are there no women on your panel?
Pardon me?
Why are there no women on your panel?
Excuse me. I was wondering about that too. Where are the women?
I personally submitted several suggestions to our academic advisory board, and they carefully considered each option before selecting our panelist.
How many women did you suggest to them?
5. With whom am I speaking?
With all due respect, Dr. LaPointe-Smith, you literally could have walked out onto the street and found someone who was qualified.
I can assure you the decision was made with care by our academic advisory board.
Who's on the advisory board?
Unfortunately, I'm not at liberty to say.
I was there. I was there at the Lincoln Memorial. I was there, and now I'm here.
She should join us.
She's another voice to add to the conversation.
Dr. LaPointe-Smith, that might be a good idea.
Please join us, if you would.
Excuse me. Sorry.
Are you all settled?
I think so, yes.
Before we continue, could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Lori Conway.
Welcome, Miss Conway.
It's Mrs. But Lori's fine.
Lori it is.
I'm linking in from Iowa, and I just want to say that I'm proud of that.
Of course. I understand.
Okay? I also want to say that I remember the Millennium Force. We took a field trip every year when I was a kid to Cedar Point.
It was a great park.
It was. I'm sorry for what happened to you.
I appreciate that.
Lori, if you feel comfortable sharing your experience at the Lincoln Memorial, we will certainly listen with open hearts. Again, only if you're comfortable.
I am. It's why I'm here.
Please know that I absolutely do not want to trigger any painful memories for you.
I understand.
I think we could all benefit from hearing your story.
Thank you. Do you mind if I get a drink of water?
Not at all.
Thank you. Thanks. It was a beautiful day, just like you said.
It was a beautiful day.
We might have bought hot dogs from you. I'm not sure, but maybe.
It's entirely possible that you did.
Our church was there for a national worship service. My daughter, Brielle, she was more interested in the ducks near the reflecting pool. She loved animals. She loved nature. I promised her that after the service, we could go and feed the ducks some popcorn, which you're not supposed to do, but she couldn't wait that long, so my mother walked away with her through the middle of the crowd. I remember the gunfire. I don't remember the explosion. My mother grabbed Brielle and ran. I lost them in the crowd, and they were gone.
I'm so very sorry.
Did you know that there was a national worship service that day?
Yes.
There's nothing about it in your exhibit.
It wasn't deliberate. As I mentioned earlier, we are still in the process of building our collection.
Those were good people who were there. People from all over the place. There were people from California and New York, and I met a family from Ireland who were visiting, and they joined our group in prayer.
Out of many, one.
Yes. Yes, we sang one of your songs, Mr. Harrison, for Isaiah. Our church kind of made your song our own. Brielle loved to sing it.
That's lovely.
Could you please put something about it in your exhibit?
We will, I assure you, and I'm happy to put you in contact with one of our curators to collect any.
Look, I don't know what your process is. I know you have some kind of advisory board that makes these
They're
decisions.
absolutely meticulous in their assessments.
Dr. LaPointe-Smith, I'm happy to do whatever I can to make sure Mrs. Conway's story makes it into the collection.
Thank you. And Mrs. Conway, thank you for your story.
I don't understand how you could know about the National Worship Service at the Lincoln Memorial and not have anything about it in your exhibit, because here's the thing. You have a display about dogs.
It's only one small part of the whole
You've
story.
got a display about dogs.
Yes.
And nothing about the National Worship Service.
Miss Aquinas will be fine. Mrs. Conway, we will create a space for the worship service.
Oh, you'll create space.
What I mean is that we'll add artifacts and information.
I know what you meant.
Ma'am, I wonder if I could ask you a question.
You don't even see us. Do you know what's happening outside of your little bubbles? Opioids, floods, droughts, suicides, and dead farmers.
That's terrible.
Yes, it is terrible.
I'm very sorry to hear this.
All you've done this entire time is talk. All you've done is ask questions I think you already know the answers to. You don't really want to know the answers. You don't really want to listen.
We're listening.
Look, my hometown is dead. We used to grow things. We used to feed you. We used to build things. My father used to tell me stories about how every once in a while a reporter would come into town and stay for a week and then write an article about what was going on in the Midwest. Like we were all the same. We're not stupid.
Of course not.
We used to have power and dignity and strength, and now it's all gone. You people are glad the Electoral College is dead. The Electoral College gave us a voice.
Do you know what the Electoral College did? It gave us a friendly idiot and a demented psychopath who nearly became king of America.
Maybe that's what we needed.
That's insane.
I'm not insane.
I'm not calling you insane. I'm calling your whole argument insane.
Mr. Patterson.
Maybe that's what we wanted. Maybe that's who we are.
Oh, there's no question that's who we've become.
They saw us. They understood us.
No, they pretended to understand you.
Bush protected us after 9/11.
There's no way you possibly remember George W. Bush.
You don't remember him either, but it's history.
May I step in, please?
Where are you getting your history from?
Stop judging me just because you have an education that does not make
Not even remotely close to what I'm trying to say.
Exactly what you're trying to say.
Can we please have some order here?
Order? When have we ever had order? When in the history of this nation have we ever had order?
If we can please take a moment. Mr. Patterson? Mr. Patterson?
My mother and Brielle were trampled to death. They tripped and they fell and they were trampled to death. Do you know what that's like? This was Brielle's. This is what she wore that day. This is blood, and this is mud, and this is a footprint. Everything you have in this exhibit is so clean, even the pitch pipe, even the hot dog sign. You have refused to show the ugliness of what happened that day. How did we get here? Start with this.
Brielle.
Yes.
The girl who loved nature. The girl who loved ducks.
She did.
Tell me more.
She was born on a beautiful day, October 8, 2024. She was early, but she was ready. Loud and proud is what Bob said, my husband. She had a healthy set of lungs. She was speaking full sentences at 18 months old. It scared the crap out of Bob. She colored inside the lines, but only when it suited her. Mostly, she just made a mess, but she was considerate with her messes. She'd always ask first, "Mommy, can I make a mess?" I always said yes. She collected pine cones and pennies. She named our cat after her pediatrician. She loved singing church songs. She loved a good road trip. She just was.
Wake, arise, unfold. Watch the dawn erase the night. See the new, remove the old. Lift your eyes up to the light. Feel your hand in mine. Feel the beat beneath my skin. What a day to be alive. Let's let the day begin. Because our home is a glory, and our wall is salvation. Our gates are praise for a glorious nation, from iron to silver, copper to gold. We have all these blessings to take and to hold. Open up the door, let the sun upon your face. Hear the calling of the shore, feel the love in my embrace. Remember you and me when you're fighting far away, and know that we will be together soon again someday. We'll be together someday. Because our home is a glory, and our walls salvation. Our gates are praise for a joyous nation, from iron to silver, copper to gold. We take all these blessings to have and to hold.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight. Our National Museum of the Unforeseen Tragedy is live streaming here on Zoom and YouTube, April 23rd through 26th. If you were moved by what you saw, please tell your friends to come and check us out. We encourage you to explore the museum exhibit and the production website at the links listed here. Thank you.